When you think of Bob Dylan, what comes to mind? A musician, a songwriter, maybe the voice of a generation, right? But what if I told you that's just the surface? We're going to look at him as something else entirely. A strategic architect, an engineer who didn't just write songs, but who built a framework to manufacture his own prophetic status. We're not here to just talk about the music. We're here to talk about the machine that built the myth. Let's break it down.
This one sentence, it's the key to everything. The whole Dylan operating system. And it's not just some clever line, it was his mission statement. It shows you the engine that drove his entire career, a constant, strategic war against what everyone expected of him. The world wanted to package him, to control him, to make him their spokesperson, and his response was to just burn that idea to the ground. It wasn't about destroying his fans, it was about destroying their notion that they owned him. And this lifelong war, it all kicked off with one spectacular, very public act of betrayal.
So, let's go back in time. Newport, Rhode Island, July 25th, 1965. Try to picture it. 20,000 folk music fans gathered on a field. This was the holy ground, the Vatican of the American folk scene, a place all about acoustic guitars and authentic protest. The air is just thick with idealism, and they're all waiting. They're waiting for their prophet, their champion, this skinny kid from Minnesota who was speaking truth to power with nothing but a guitar and a harmonica. They are waiting for Bob Dylan.
But the guy who walks out on stage, that's not the Dylan they were expecting. He's in a leather jacket, his hair's all over the place, and he's not holding his usual acoustic guitar. He's strapped into a Fender Stratocaster, an electric guitar. Now to you and me, that sounds pretty normal. But to them, in that moment, in that place, it was like blasphemy. And when the band kicks into Maggie's farm, the sound that rips through the air isn't music to their ears. It's betrayal. It's a declaration of war. The boos start almost right away. And get this, the folk legend Pete Seeger is reportedly backstage so mad he's looking for an axe to cut the power cables. But Dylan, he doesn't stop. He leans into the mic, turns to his band, and tells them, "Play it effing louder."
Okay, you have to understand, this wasn't some rock star tantrum. It wasn't just him being difficult. This was a calculated move, a masterstroke. This was the public launch of the key part of his whole framework, a concept we can call strategic alienation. See, Dylan knew a dangerous truth that most artists never learn. Being the voice of a generation is a beautiful prison. It's a role with an expiration date. The moment you give the audience exactly what they want, every time, you become their prisoner. By plugging in that electric guitar, he was basically performing surgery on his own audience. He was using shock and noise to force them to stop worshiping the idol and actually start listening to the message. He knew the only way to last, the only way to stay in control of his own art, was to remain impossible to pin down.
So how did a guy get so far ahead of the curve? That's what we're digging into. We're breaking down his entire playbook. We've just seen the electric betrayal. Now we're going to rewind to see how this whole persona was forged in a fake identity. We'll decode his core philosophy, the transmitter mandate, and then check out his most powerful creative weapon, the Jell-O Mold Strategy. We'll follow his path from dropout to profit, and then we'll wrap it all up with how you can start to build your own framework.
All right, let's dive in. Forged in a fake identity. To really get why our 24-year-old, at the absolute peak of his fame, would willingly just set his own reputation on fire, we've got to go back. Back to the place where Bob Dylan was first created. The brutal, unforgiving winter of 1961 in New York City. Just look at how fast this all happened. It is absolutely insane. In just 4 years, Robert Zimmerman, a kid from a mining town, becomes Bob Dylan, the supposed moral conscience of America. That kind of pressure doesn't just create expectations, it builds a prison around you in real time. And he knew, way ahead of anyone else, that he needed an escape plan before the walls even finished closing in. So Newport, that wasn't him just snapping. No way. It was a prison break. The final explosion in a plan that had been in the works for years.
Because you gotta remember, when he first showed up in Greenwich Village, he was a nobody. He was Robert Zimmerman, arriving from Minnesota during the coldest winter in 30 years with basically nothing. No cash, no contacts, no safety net. He was just one more aspiring folk singer, sleeping on couches and playing for spare change. It was a constant, daily battle just to not disappear, to not be totally erased by the city. So right there, in that struggle, he makes this incredibly smart move. While all the other singers were trying so hard to be authentic, Dylan realized that's a trap. He decided to use myth as a weapon, as a shield. He basically killed off Robert Zimmerman and created this whole new character, Bob Dylan. This new guy was a walking piece of American folklore. He made up stories about running away to join the circus, about riding the rails. He became obsessed with his hero, Woody Guthrie, absorbing his personality. He understood that in a city overflowing with talent, the one thing people can't ignore is a good mystery. He wasn't trying to be liked, he was trying to be unsolvable.
Okay, so that's the how he built the persona. But what about the why? What was the philosophy driving all of this? That brings us to the transmitter mandate. This is the core belief system that explains pretty much every major decision he ever made. It wasn't just about changing his music, it was about operating from a completely different set of rules.
This quote right here says it all. Now, on the surface, it sounds like some simple, folksy wisdom, but it's actually this powerful declaration of independence. He's basically tearing up the unwritten contract between an artist and their fans. His job, as he saw it, wasn't to please the crowd. It wasn't to serve a movement. His only job was to be a channel for the ideas that were flowing through him, wherever they took him. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. Dylan saw two paths in front of him. On one side, you have the spokesperson. This is the artist as a product. They serve the audience, give them what they want, and for a while, they're loved. But because they're tied to a specific time and taste, they have a built-in expiration date. The spokesperson eventually becomes a relic, a piece of nostalgia. But on the other path, you have the transmitter. This is the artist as an enigma. They don't serve the audience, they serve the message. And because no one can pin them down, they have all this strategic leverage. They can't be easily dismissed. A spokesperson ends up in a museum. A transmitter can become a prophet.
So this wasn't just some vague idea. He had a whole toolkit to make it happen. He used radical fluidity, which gave him permission to change his sound, his identity, his politics, whenever the message needed him to. He wasn't just writing songs. He was making what you could call linguistic interventions, changing the actual words people use to talk about war and justice. He used iceberg logic, where 90% of a song's meaning is hidden under the surface, forcing you to dig deeper. And all of that adds up to strategic leverage, the ultimate power to define yourself on your own terms. A philosophy is one thing, but a system is what gets results. And this is where Dylan really becomes an architect. He wasn't just sitting around waiting for inspiration to strike. He developed a brutally effective system for turning his ideas into art that could change the world. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how he actually did it. His main creative process was something we'll call the subconscious audit. He wouldn't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a song about peace. That's what a craftsman does. Dylan's goal was different. He'd get into this almost meditative state just to listen. Listen to the scraps of ideas, the images, the phrases floating around in his own head. His goal wasn't to build a song perfectly. It was to catch the raw idea, the raw frequency, before his logical brain could jump in, overthink it, and kill its energy.
And wow, did this system work? Blowin' in the Wind, one of the most important songs of the 20th century, he wrote it in about 10 minutes in a coffee shop. But that wasn't a lucky lightning strike. That was the system at work. He had this high-velocity output protocol that was designed to get the pure, unfiltered idea onto the page as fast as possible. The genius wasn't in the 10 minutes of writing, it was in the years he spent building a system that made those 10 minutes possible.
Okay, now for his secret weapon. I love this. It's called the Jell-O Mold Strategy, and it is pure genius. Here's the recipe. First, find a foundation. He'd take an old traditional folk melody, something that was already wired into people's brains, something familiar and comforting. Step 2, strip it down. He'd take out the old predictable lyrics, leaving just the melodic skeleton. Step 3, and this is the killer move, reshell with truth. Into that comfortable, familiar Jell-O mold, he would pour these radical, complex, and challenging modern lyrics. And step 4, deploy the message. The listener's brain is just humming along to the nice tune, and bam, these really difficult ideas sneak right past their defenses and plant themselves directly in their subconscious. It's like sonic terrorism dressed up as a campfire song.
So, you add all of this up. The strategy, the persona, the mandate, the Jell-O mold. What do you get? What was the ultimate payoff? Well, it wasn't just a bunch of hit records or a successful career. It was way, way bigger than that. It was literally changing how our entire culture thinks about popular music.
I mean, just think about the sheer scale of his journey. He starts as this kid from a Minnesota mining town who honestly should have been completely forgotten by history. And he ends up with a Nobel Prize for literature. They had never given that to a musician before. It totally redefined the category. His lyrics have been quoted in legal cases, even by the Supreme Court. That's not a career path. That is a total paradigm shift.
And this is the real takeaway. It wasn't just about him. Before Dylan, a songwriter was an entertainer, a commodity.
He completely demolished that model. He proved that a 3-minute song could carry the same weight as a novel. He basically invented a new job title for artists to aspire to. Not a pop star, not just a protest singer, but a prophet of change. He didn't just play the game better than everyone else, he changed the rules of the game itself.
Okay, so let's bring it all home. Build your own framework. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a story about Bob Dylan. It's about the power of language and the importance of building your own reality instead of just accepting the one you're given. So, what does this mean for you and me? How can we actually use any of this?
Here's the bottom line. We live in a world that wants to slap a label on you, put you in a neat little box and make you predictable. In that world, your greatest defense, your greatest advantage is the complexity of your own mystery. Don't try to be easy for everyone to understand. Instead, be the one who defines the terms of the conversation. Real power isn't about everyone knowing you. It's about you controlling what they're allowed to know.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Look at your own life, your job, your art, whatever it is you do. Identify the standard loop. What's the comfortable acoustic song everyone expects you to play over and over? What role have they put you in? Now ask yourself the question Dylan asked on that stage in 1965. How can you change the frequency? What's your electric guitar? What's the one move you could make that would force everyone to see you in a completely new light?
Because when all is said and done, when the noise of other people's expectations fades away, the only thing you're left with is the story you wrote for yourself, the framework you built. Dylan's framework let him lead his generation, not just reflect it. And the lesson for us is crystal clear. Stop being a spokesperson for someone else's idea of who you should be. Stop playing the songs they expect to hear. It's time to start building your own framework.